Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Turn this fan off. How's everybody doing today? Good, hopefully. Man, I keep seeing these things pop up about Gervonta Davis. No longer working with Coach Calvin, and now Gervonta Davis is with David Benavidez' father, Jose Benavidez Sr. And I don't know what to think about that. This is becoming one of the biggest stories today. And it's not even about a title changing hands. It's not about a knockout. It's not about Tank with a fight announcement. It's really about one of the strongest relationships in boxing, what seems to be coming to an end over what I think is something trivial. Now, that's just me on the outside looking in. I don't know what all's going on. You hear things, but, just me as an observer. When I look at that relationship between Tank and Coach Calvin, and Coach Calvin losing his son, and I think Tank kind of helped to fill that void. And when people talk about Gervonta Davis, they always talked about Coach Calvin Ford. You know what I'm saying? Seem to have been inseparable. But, this thing about being a father, a mentor, motivator, protector, a strategist who helped Tank get through the amateurs and to get to where he's at as a professional and become one of the biggest superstars from the streets of Baltimore. When you hear that Tank and Calvin may not be working together, it makes you stop for a second and say, what the hell is going on? Because the reports and rumors, man, have just sparked conversations that Gervonta moved in the other direction. But the thing is, it could be misunderstanding or jealousy. But I'll tell you what, man, what this represents is one of the biggest trainer changes in boxing over the past several years. And to hear that Tank is now working with Jose Benavidez Sr., I'm like, why? I'm not saying he's not a good trainer. I'm just like, how did we get here? Was it business, boxing, the shit between Tank and Coach Calvin personal? Was it years of misunderstanding? Supposedly it's the Krishan Rock thing, and Tank feeling like they want to be more famous and focus on him. So let's try to break down all these situations, because I'm going to tell you this. Trainer changes are a bigger deal than most people realize. You know what I'm saying? For casual fans, they just think a trainer teaches someone how to throw punches. But that can be further from reality. A great trainer, which is what Coach Calvin Ford has been to Gervonta Davis, becomes part of a fighter's daily life. They know everything about you, the ins and outs. If you're injured, confidence, when you have mood swings, family problems, money issues, motivation disappearing, if you're overtraining, when to throttle back, when to push you. They know everything. The relationship becomes like family. That's what Tank was to Coach Calvin. He was like a son to him. That's why trainer splits, man, when you see those kind of relationships, it's rare. You know what I'm saying? If there's a split, it's not simple. It's probably something emotional. Something had to happen, whether it drove some kind of emotional reaction or response, and now the fighter decides to go elsewhere, or the trainer decides to go elsewhere. Now, one thing is, Coach Calvin wasn't hired after Tank became famous. He helped build Tank from a little kid into what he is now. You know what I mean? A superstar. Molded his identity inside the ring, helped him outside the ring, tried to steer him away from trouble. A relationship like what these guys had has lasted decades, and we thought it would have lasted until the end. But it seems that something changed. So for Tank to want a new voice, which is what someone's saying, I don't think that's the case. Now, you can talk to sports psychologists. They'll say this kind of stuff, There's a huge argument. Maybe that took place over there, which I think there was an argument. You could see it was a little trouble in paradise when Tank was fighting Lamont Roach, whether he was listening to Calvin Ford or not. At the end of the fight, how he seemed to just kind of walk by him and be very rude and very abrupt. So I believe there was an argument, especially the rumors from Coach Calvin, that Tank didn't like the fact that he was training her. But I'll say this. Tank was missing in action for a minute. You know what I'm saying? Because of some personal woes he had to kind of figure out. Why shouldn't Coach Calvin sit there, man, and train her and train anyone else? As long as he still can, allocate the time to Tank like he's used to doing. I just don't understand the problem. So it sounded to me like there may be a little misunderstanding or jealousy, which may have driven a huge argument. I don't think there's betrayal. I don't think there's no betraying somebody who's kind of not really in the hopper, because they have all this other shit going on in their personal life. I don't see the issue with Coach Calvin training her unless she's a distraction or now it's taken away from the time they used to allocate the Tank. That's different, but I don't know that. But I do wonder, maybe Tank needs this break from hearing the same voice he's been hearing for years to make him appreciate what he had. And maybe for Coach Calvin to maybe respect the relationship more. I don't know. But I can tell you, maybe when you hear the same voice over and over for years, that voice loses its effectiveness. You know what I'm saying? But I'll tell you this, that phenomenon exists in virtually every single sport. You see championship football coaches win championship after championship, then they get fired. You know what I mean? Basketball coaches replace baseball managers. And it's not because they become bad, it's just the organizations believe a different voice could spark something new, new energy, you know what I'm saying? And that's true. I've seen it in organizations where you have someone in there and people just don't respond no more. You may have been too overwhelming or too underwhelming, or you just get comfortable, complacent, and they need new energy, new life. And they'll come in and they'll have you replaced and they'll move you somewhere else where you maybe can be more effective. I've seen it happen. So could that be happening here? It's a possibility, but this thing about Jose Benavidez Sr., I wonder what Jose Benavidez Sr. is going to do with Tank. Because if he truly begins working with him extensively, as far as Tank with Benavidez Sr., I think fans should expect people to immediately begin analyzing stylistic changes. Tank is known for fighting with patience, knowing he has that power, not trying to rush anything, setting traps, and exploding. Benavidez Sr. seemed to be more of a guy who has a contrasting style when compared to what Coach Calvin was doing with Tank. He's all about constant pressure, high punch output, aggressive body work, physical strength, mental toughness, relentless conditioning, and being mean inside that ring. That's not really Gervonta Davis with all those things I listed up, maybe a few, but that ain't Tank to be out there, high punch output and all that, and just, aggressive body work and a high volume of punches. That ain't Tank. But we got to wait and see, because if you look at what Benavidez Sr. did with his son, David Benavidez, he turned him into one of boxing's most feared pressure fighters. And Tank is a pressure fighter. He'll put that pressure on you. So naturally, when you think about it like that, make you wonder if those philosophies could influence Tank and if they can work. You know what I'm saying? But I 100% believe Benavidez Sr. does not want to change Gervonta Davis. No way. If he did that, he'd be taking it to the stupid. Maybe you make some refinements. Maybe you say, hey, we can probably try this. You're really great at this, but this right here is your money, the left hand. But the pressure you put on, maybe we could be a bit more intelligent with how we're, applying the pressure. Maybe. But I'll tell you this. If they can be successful with what they're doing with Gervonta Davis and add another dimension to his already dangerous style, Gervonta Davis is going to be a problem. More than what he already is. And look, and these are legitimate boxing talking points. So anyone out there like, hey, yo, Hood, hold your horse, you're taking to the super. Nah, man, you hold your horses. Because if they can add that additional dimension, that's going to, affect future performances. And those future performances are going to give us the answer on whether it worked or not. But it's going to be a change in Gervonta Davis' performances. But as far as Coach Calvin, man, let me tell you, I don't see the problem with him training Krishan Rock. That created tension with Tank. According to the internet, Coach Calvin said that, I'm just going to call it internet speculation. But I'll tell you this, man, from a general standpoint, just I could see, because I've always seen Virgil Hunter as a one trainer type fighter with Andre Ward. I've always seen Bomac as a one trainer type fighter with Terrence Crawford, Roger Mayweather with Floyd, Danny Garcia's dad, Angel Garcia with him. There's a lot of trainers out here where you see them more as one fighter trainers, and that's how I always saw Coach Calvin Ford. But I just think maybe the time, the attention, the priorities weren't clearly communicated to Gervonta Davis, and now you have a public figure as part of Coach Calvin's stable and part of his profession, and Gervonta's like, I don't like it. So maybe there's a little bit of jealousy too. Misunderstanding, communication breakdown, jealousy. I don't know. But I do know that it seemed to have affected the long-lasting relationship that Tank had with Coach Calvin. Now, misunderstandings, communication is the foundation of every successful athlete-coach relationship. If you don't have effective communication, you're going to have problems. That ain't Hood Champion saying it. I think that's based on statistical data to be a fact. Because if the communication is strong, problems can be addressed early. When the communication breaks down, even minor issues can start to feel much larger than they actually are. You know what I'm saying? You have one person believes they aren't being appreciated. The other believes they're doing everything they've always done. One feels priorities have changed. The other one doesn't realize anything is wrong. Next thing you know, hold your horses, somebody taking it to the stupid. And now two people who once trusted each other, like Tank and Calvin, completely find themselves seeing the relationship very differently. And that's sad to know that may have happened with Tank and Coach Calvin. But I think the shit's common in sports, and it doesn't necessarily require anger like some people are saying. Tank is going to knock out Calvin. Calvin threatened Tank. Man, stop spreading bullshit. None of that shit happened. Doesn't necessarily mean they're angry at each other and there's betrayal and personal conflict. I just think it's a misunderstanding and a little bit of jealousy, maybe, you know what I'm saying? But that's what it is. It's just people who are saying these crazy things, it's just perception. You know what I'm saying? And I think perception is also what may have affected Tank, and what Coach Calvin is saying is right, where Tank didn't like the fact that they're training Krishan Rock. The perception could be maybe that, hey, maybe they do want to be famous. They don't want to work with me and give me the time like what I'm accustomed to. You see, people are resistant to change. So maybe this is what has happened here with Gervonta Davis. But I think Tank has just become extremely protective. He's been through a lot. You don't know where that man is mentally. You know what I'm saying? He probably just has become really intense and feels he needs an intense focus on his preparation. Tank knows his career is short. He's been at this for a while. He doesn't have too much longer, man. Training camps matter. Fights carry financial and legal implications. And because of that, maybe someone like Gervonta has become very protective of anything he feels could affect his preparation, because he's trying to get to a certain point to really be there for his children. You know what I mean? I think he wants complete attention, consistent routines. I mean, some kind of expectation management, familiar coaching voices, and absolute confidence in everyone around him that they're really there for him and they're not going to deviate and go do something different in a time where he really needs them. And someone can say, yo, with that mentality, that just sounds like competitive strength. Okay, well, what happened with Tank and Coach Calvin then? Because if they both have competitive strength and they have effective communication, it shouldn't be a problem. It should be a win-win. But I think if that's the case, it just makes a professional relationship more delicate when expectations are not aligned. But I'll just say this for Gervonta Davis, hey, do what you want to do. We'll still be watching, but I never like seeing fighters go with new trainers and then have a fight. And the things they do instinctively, now they're reluctant to do it because they got this different philosophy. They went through different conditioning methods. They're different defensive philosophies, priorities, the offensive combinations are different. Communication styles are different. It takes a while to really gel with your new coach. But I'm more interested in what Davis does when he gets back in the ring. Success will look pretty good, but I'd rather see him with Coach Calvin and them. But if he can improve his punch volume and still be effective, that's great. If he has sharp conditioning, that would be great. If he has greater activity them early rounds, man, that would be great. If he has a few more tactical wrinkles or continued success against elite competition and can effectively and more intelligently apply that pressure, Gervonta Davis may no kidding be a tank. He may be a Viva El Nigero. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm just telling you, Gervonta was already a beast. The Lamont Roach fight made us kind of question some things, but work with Benavidez Sr., you better believe Tank is going to be different. Could be good, could be bad. But Benavidez Sr., when it comes to his guys, they win. Just like Coach Calvin. So I think Tank went to a good team. So at the end of the day, Tank and Coach Calvin, father-son relationship, had a great partnership. Has it permanently come to an end? I don't know about that. But it does seem to be some kind of disagreement, and maybe a fresh approach was needed because they don't need to be going at each other like that, especially when respect goes out the window. That's never good, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, what matters is what happens inside them ropes. And I'm looking to see what materializes. Y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.